I sat there, completely stunned, as my wife of 25 years laid out why she was giving me divorce papers. Her words were muffled, barely penetrating my shock. Alan, are you even listening? You look like you're in a daze. Snap out of it. This is important. I'm sorry, I was distracted. What were you saying? The terms are clear. There's nothing to argue about. I'm not asking for anything. Do you get that? Absolutely nothing. You keep the house, the cars, and all the money in the bank. If you sign this, it's over in 3 months. I was at a loss for words. Tracy and I had been together since high school. We raised 2 wonderful twin daughters, Wendy and Tina, who both went to Columbia University to study international banking. We lived in a beautiful suburban house and drove Volvos. Tracy had her own credit cards and cell phone, and I never denied her anything. I never cheated, never yelled, never hit her. She never showed any signs of being unhappy or dissatisfied. This came out of nowhere. Maybe that was the problem. I wasn't paying attention. I understand how divorce works, Tracy, but can you tell me why? It might be too late to change anything, but I need to know. Tracy slumped into a kitchen chair, clearly unwilling to explain her reasons, and hoping I'd just sign the papers and let her go. Just tell me, Tracy, what did I do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong, Alan. You were the perfect husband. Sometimes I wished you'd mess up so I'd have an excuse to leave, but you never did. You were great at raising the kids and getting them through college. You always gave me everything I wanted, even when I was unreasonable. You bought me a beautiful house. My parents adore you. Don't ever think you did anything wrong because you didn't. She looked around 45, with a clear complexion and perfect hair that shone in the sunlight. She jogged regularly, keeping her body fit and tanned. On weekdays, she dressed like a Land's End model, but she could be glamorous when needed. Tracy was as perfect as she claimed I was. I just couldn't understand what was behind this. I'm sorry, but it doesn't make sense. There has to be a reason. You can't just say it's okay and then walk away. Alan, I'm trying to do this in a way that doesn't hurt your feelings or make me look bad. Can't we just leave it at that? No, Tracy, I need to know why. I found someone else. He's a real estate developer. He has a beautiful apartment overlooking the river and a sleek black Mercedes. He's handsome, rich, and madly in love with me. You were and still are a grocery clerk at the supermarket. I'm not belittling your job because you've always taken care of us and earned enough to keep us comfortable. But you'll always be a grocery clerk. I wanted more than that. I couldn't see you doing that for me. You were always content with your job and never tried to improve. It was painful to hear that. I was the manager of the grocery department, but she still saw me as a clerk. When I had a chance to advance my career and move out of town, I turned it down to keep our family together, and this was my reward. It was painful but not worth mentioning. Does this rich, good-looking guy have a name? Owen Brooks. He's the president of Horizon Development Company. How long have you known him? 6 months. You slept with him? Tracy sat up straight in the chair, her eyes darting around before finally meeting mine. Yes, I was trying to avoid the subject, but since you insist, yes, I cheated on you. I was an adulteress. Are you happy now? I sat for a moment, then reached over, signed the divorce papers in 3 places, initialed 2, and handed them back to her. I think he's better than I am. Sorry to disappoint you. I got up, and as I was leaving the room, Tracy yelled, "No, that's not the reason. He wasn't better than you, just different. Don't walk away believing that, Alan. Don't you dare." By then, I was out the door. I was so wrapped up in my work and hobbies that I hadn't even noticed Tracy gradually moving her things out of the house. By the time she handed me the papers, she had moved most of her clothes and personal belongings into Owen's apartment. She thoughtfully left all the wedding and family photos behind so I could enjoy them in her absence. When I got back to the house, she was gone. Her Volvo was still in the driveway, and I figured she wouldn't need it anymore. She had left a power of attorney on the kitchen table to sell the house and car. I spent the rest of the night drinking the beer from the refrigerator. By then, I realized there was no turning back, and I didn't want to. Tracy was gone for good. The next morning, I called work and took 3 months of overdue vacation. They had always nagged me to take time off, so there was no problem. I had plenty of vacation and sick leave. I quickly called the girls at school and briefly explained that we were breaking up, but refused to give them any other information. They wanted to call Tracy, but I didn't have her new phone number. I had 3 months to pull myself together and decide what I was going to do. I disconnected my landline, changed my cell phone number, and canceled the one Tracy had. The Volvo dealer gave me the low book value for Tracy's car. I had a high school friend, Jerry Wilson, who was now a real estate broker. He agreed to sell the house quickly at a low price, without a listing. To be sure, I canceled all my credit cards and opened new bank accounts. I cashed in my life insurance policies. It was time to get my affairs in order. I went around the house and gathered everything that could possibly belong to Tracy. There was enough to fill 3 trash bags. I packed the girls' personal belongings into boxes and put them in the closet next to the house. I spent 3 hours sorting through family photos. I put all the girls' pictures in a box for them, while all the pictures of Tracy went into the trash. It was stupid, I know, but I didn't care. The main problem I faced was a lack of direction. I had no idea what I would do after 3 months. Would I stay here or leave? Would I keep working or find something new? I had 2 hobbies. I collected coins, mostly cents with Indian heads on them. They were easy to collect and readily available. I bought and sold them on eBay and enjoyed it. My second passion was geocaching. It gave me an excuse to get outside and get some exercise. Tracy hated this activity because of the ticks, poison ivy, and the walking involved. I couldn't see how I could make a living from these activities. When I wasn't busy with my hobbies, I spent time reading the Wall Street Journal. Wendy and Tina gave me a subscription every year for Christmas. I had no interest in stocks and bonds, but I read everything about farm commodities. I knew more about sugar, wheat, and corn than most market analysts. Of course, it was just a hobby. I had no money invested in any of it. I gathered all the information I could about Horizon Development and Owen Brooks. Jerry Wilson managed to get more details about Owen and his current projects than I could. He even cross-checked some information with a friend who worked at a local commercial bank. I was eager to see what Jerry had found. It had been several weeks, and during that time, I hadn't seen or heard from Tracy. The girls called me every week, but they hadn't mentioned hearing from their mother either. I had a feeling they were sympathetic to my side, but Tracy was still their mother, and they probably felt some duty to support her. I organized a few yard sales and got rid of a lot of stuff. I left enough furniture in the house to make it appealing to potential buyers. One Sunday, I saw a picture of Tracy and Owen in the society section of the newspaper. They were at a political rally, sipping wine with local dignitaries. A few more weeks passed, and Jerry finally made me an offer on the house. It was pretty low compared to the appraisal, but they wanted to close the deal in 60 days, which suited me just fine. He had also compiled an intriguing biography of Owen and suggested we discuss it over lunch. We set a date to meet. Needing a break from everything, I decided to get out of the house. Hayes Mountain was one of the best places around for hiking and geocaching. Although I had already found all the geocaches there were 3 landmarks on the mountain that I hadn't discovered yet. These landmarks are reference points placed by government surveyors and real estate developers to establish property boundaries. They come in various forms, but usually they are metal rods set into concrete. Finding them is a fascinating side quest for dedicated geocachers. I decided that today would be the day I found all 3 landmarks on the mountain. In addition to my GPS, I brought along a metal detector. Finding a piece of rebar in the woods isn't easy, and I needed all the help I could get. The GPS would guide me to the general area. Much of Hayes Mountain was part of the Madison Land Trust, which was nearing 2,000 acres but always looking to expand. Subdivisions and industrial parks had claimed most of the vacant land, and the trust had to rely on donations. Adjacent to the trust's parking lot was an orchard and farmhouse, with a large "For Sale" sign. After parking my car, I wandered over to the fence by the orchard to take a look. It was sad to think that this beautiful estate might soon be bulldozed for development. "Are you planning to buy it or just admiring?" an old man asked with a smile as he walked toward me. He was dressed in overalls but wore a Paul Deere baseball cap instead of a straw hat. He introduced himself as Paul Ward. "If I had $1 million, I'd buy it in a heartbeat," I joked. We both laughed. "You won't have trouble selling it, will you?" I asked. "I have interested buyers, but I try to hold out as long as possible," he replied. "Why?" "I was hoping the land trust would buy it, but they don't seem to have the funds. They want to keep the fruit trees as they are, which is fine by me. It doesn't please the developers who want to plant everything. I think it would be a wonderful addition to the trust's land." "How can a land trust compete with big developers?" I asked. "I've offered them a better deal. It's listed for $1 million, but I'll sell it to the trust for $600,000. The trouble is they can't raise that amount right now. If they can't do it in 90 days, I'll have to give the option to that damn real estate developer. That son of jerk calls me every week and I'm getting tired of him. An option isn't a sale, right? No. The buyer pays for the right to purchase the land within the next 6 months for $1 million. He pays $100,000 for the option. If he can't raise the $1 million, he loses the option payment. It's a good deal for me, but I don't want him to get it. He has the $1 million ready, so he'll be safe. The problem is that he needs to acquire all 6 properties for the deal to go through. That's why he's willing to pay more than it's worth. What happens if you don't sell him the option? He'll be in big trouble. Since the land trust can't raise the money, it looks like Horizon has a sure shot. However, if he doesn't get this lot, he'll lose the entire deal, including the money he paid for the options on the other 5 lots. That's probably around $1 million. His backers will abandon him and leave him hanging. If I had the money, I'd help you out. Yeah, everyone says that. We shared another laugh, and I headed off for my hike. His mention of Horizon intrigued me. The landmarks were within a mile of each other as the crow flies. But on the mountain, it was twice that distance. The first 2 were fairly easy to find. They were standard surveyor markers. The last marker was much older and much harder to locate. When I finally found it, I discovered a small brick monument with a bronze plaque attached. It was buried under years of leaves and debris. I took a picture to post with the magazine. At that moment, my life changed. The metal detector was still on, and as I stepped away from the marker, it began to beep faintly. I put on my headset and started scanning the area about 10 feet south of the landmark. Eventually, I pinpointed the target and carefully began to dig. You don't usually find metal in the middle of the woods. In 5 minutes, I unearthed a small iron box wrapped in heavily oiled canvas. The surface was rusty, but the box itself was sturdy. The lock was made of heavy bronze and still functional. Often, finds like this on public lands are considered treasures and should be turned over to the government or a historical agency. For some reason, that didn't seem like the right option today. I placed the box in my bag and headed home. On the drive back, I couldn't stop thinking about what might be inside. Gold coins were the first thing that came to mind, or perhaps important documents from the Civil War era. The possibilities were only limited by the size of the container. Once home, I cleaned off the kitchen table, pulled out my tools, and began examining my find. I didn't want to destroy the lock, but I couldn't figure out any other way to open it. I had no idea if the mechanism inside the lock was still functional. Reluctantly, I decided the lock would have to be sacrificed. My bolt cutter made quick work of it. Inside the box was another piece of oiled canvas. I carefully unwrapped it and found 12 pennies. Why would anyone want to bury 12 pennies? These weren't ordinary pennies, but old large cents. The newest was dated 1814, and the oldest was 1793. Despite their age, the dates were clearly readable on each coin. Surprisingly, there was no green corrosion, which is common on old copper coins. I'd never been interested in collecting large cents, as I thought I could get more value by buying newer Indian head cents. However, I did have a book my grandfather left me called The Quirks of the Penny. It discussed the different types and varieties of large cent stamps. I found it boring since I didn't own any large cents, and it had been gathering dust on a shelf for nearly 30 years. Tonight, it would finally be useful. I stayed up until dawn with my grandfather's book and a magnifying glass. My scanner took beautiful high-resolution photos of each coin. Every crack and scratch was perfectly visible, and the condition of each coin was clear. I slept until noon. When I woke up, I called work just to check in. They mentioned that Sam Edwards, one of the company executives, had asked about me. They didn't have any more information, and I had other things on my mind, so I didn't follow up. It took a trip to the bank to secure a safe deposit box. After spending hours online, I discovered my pennies were worth several $1,000,000. It wasn't just their age, but their condition and the rarity of the stamps. I suddenly understood why money laundering was such a big deal. Turning my precious coins into cash would be no easy task. While having breakfast at IHOP, I saw another picture of Tracy and Owen in the newspaper. This time, they were at the opening of a new art gallery. Tracy was wearing a black cocktail dress, holding a glass of wine or champagne, both of them smiling at the camera. As I looked at the photo, my next step became clear. After securing the safe deposit box, I called Paul Ward, and asked him to hold off on making any decisions about the land for a few days. He seemed agreeable to that. I then went to the land trust office to learn how to make a donation to their organization. They were very accommodating. With the divorce finalization just 4 weeks away, I felt that deadline was significant. I spent the rest of the day researching coin dealers and auction houses, not looking for ads, but for any history of lawsuits. Eventually, I settled on Hayes and Burns in New York City. They had a strong financial standing and seemed capable of handling controversial sales without much trouble or publicity. I made an appointment for Monday afternoon. I called my daughters and asked them to keep Monday morning free for lunch. The facade of the Hayes and Burns office was a chic showroom with plenty of glass and light. The display cases were filled with various collectibles, and the walls were adorned with numismatic memorabilia. I gave my last name and was escorted to a less glamorous part of the building. "Welcome to New York, Mr. Turner. I understand you have some interesting coins to show us. Is this your first time in the city?" Andrew Hayes asked. He looked about 10 years older than his photo in the advertisement. "Thank you. My daughters attend Columbia University, so I've been here before but never on business. I'm not doubting your expertise, but do you have a specialist in early copper coins? If so, I think their presence would be beneficial." "I'm not sensitive about that, and I think it's a good idea too," he agreed, leaning over to the intercom on his desk. "Marie, have Carlson come to my office." Vincent Carlson, a well-known author of several guides on large cents and half cents, soon entered. He also looked older than his photos. "Gentlemen, I have 12 special coins that I'm offering for sale. I hope to sell 4 today and keep the 5th for your consideration. The other 7 I'll save for later if today goes well. I know it seems unbelievable, but I think 6 of these coins will qualify as conditional census status. I'm sure Mr. Carlson can confirm if I'm right. Since census-conditioned cents rarely hit the market, I hoped you would be interested." "Where did these coins come from?" Carlson asked. "My grandfather left them to me when he passed away." "I don't mean to insult you, Mr. Turner, but this story is hard to believe. What can you show us?" I spread 4 pictures on the table, each showing the obverse and reverse of one of the coins. They were enlarged and very clear. Andrew and Vincent examined each photo for several minutes. Finally, Andrew spoke up. "What did you estimate for these 4? "Based on recent auction results, I think they could fetch about 3 million, I said. Vincent nodded in agreement, indicating he thought my figure was reasonable. "I only want 800,000 for the lot, but it needs to be handled in a special way," I explained. Andrew leaned back, smiling. "We can handle that. How special are we talking?" I handed him a letter from the Land Trust explaining how to donate land, along with an advertisement for Paul Ward's orchard. "I want you to buy this piece of land and donate it to the Madison Land Trust. The price is $600,000. You'll get a nice tax deduction and be seen as philanthropists. I'll take the remaining money in cash." "Give us a moment," Andrew said, and he and Vincent stepped to the other end of the room. After a few minutes, Vincent left, and Andrew returned. "Do you have any coins with you?" "Yes, I also have a 5th coin that I'd like you to keep." Vincent returned with a purple Crown Royal bag. "We agree to your terms on the first part of the deal and hope you can accept ours on the second part," he said, dumping the bag's contents on the desk. It contained nearly 100 different coins, mostly gold, but some silver too. This collection's retail price is around $300,000. For various reasons, we find it challenging to sell them, but you shouldn't have a problem. I understand you've sold coins on eBay before? I nodded. These coins, inherited from your grandfather, should sell easily, and we will both benefit. I assure you, you won't have any difficulties, he said with a slight wink. After a moment of thought, I agreed, and handed the 4 pennies to Mr. Hayes. We all shook hands. Now, Mr. Turner, tell us about this 5th coin. Holding the photograph in my hand, I looked at Mr. Carlson. Name the highest-rated 1793 strawberry leaf you've ever seen. I've never seen one, but I think the highest score is VF12, he replied. I rated this picture an 8, but I'm not a professional, I said. He wasn't looking at the picture. He was looking at my face. Both of them tried to see the photograph simultaneously. Carlson was smiling broadly, and I could see dollar signs in Hayes' eyes. How much? Hayes asked. Best offer, if you can figure out how to pay me. Would you like a cup of coffee, Mr. Turner? Of course, black would be just fine. They both left the room with the picture, and a few minutes later, a young woman brought me a cup of coffee. Mr. Hayes will be with you shortly. He has some calls to make. Will you be all right? I nodded and sipped my coffee. 30 minutes later, Hayes returned with a stunning woman. She had dark eyes, raven hair, and what seemed to be Middle Eastern features. I guess she was no more than 30, impeccably dressed with a commanding presence. For a moment, I thought I recognized her but couldn't place from where. Hello, my name is Olivia Goldberg. Do you have a passport, Mr. Turner? Her voice was deep yet feminine. Yes. Good. We'll be heading to JFK shortly to set up a new offshore bank account for you. Do you have anything for Mr. Hayes? I handed Andrew the 1793 strawberry leaf coin, and he looked like a kid on Christmas morning. Thank you, he said. As he left the room, we hadn't settled on a price, but I still had 7 coins that Hayes wanted. Mr. Hayes agreed to hold on to the small bag of coins until I returned. An hour later, Olivia and I were already on a plane to the Cayman Islands. She barely spoke during the flight. When we arrived at the airport, several photographers swarmed her, snapping pictures. She seemed annoyed, but kept a sweet smile. I had no idea why there was so much interest in her. It was my first time flying first class, and the experience ended too quickly. A bright yellow mini SUV awaited us at the terminal. Olivia didn't hesitate to hike up her skirt as she slid into the driver's seat. I couldn't help but sneak glances at her tanned legs, and she noticed, amused by my embarrassment. 20 minutes later, we parked at a mid-sized condominium building. Olivia Goldberg owned the entire building, using the top floor as her personal apartment. Can I get you anything, Mr. Turner? A beer would be nice. Watching her leave the room was as captivating as the glimpse of her legs at the terminal. It's not my usual behavior to fawn over young women, but Olivia Goldberg was an exception. We stepped onto a small balcony overlooking the ocean. The view was breathtaking, but the wind was a bit too strong for my liking. It seemed like she was trying to impress me with the grandeur of the place. While the scenery was beautiful, my main focus was setting up the new bank account. You don't talk much, Mr. Turner. Surely you have some questions you'd like answered. It struck me as odd that a woman of her status would drink beer from a bottle. I imagined her more as a champagne or martini type. Normally, I prefer to wait, but I decided to ask, why did we need to come here to open a bank account? It's simple, safe, and secure for accessing your money. I think it will work well for you. It's just 1 coin. Yes, but you have 7 more. I'm sorry, but that still seems excessive. Thankfully, we moved back inside the condo, sheltered from the wind. Can you accept this? She suddenly said. I brought you here to be my sex slave for a few days. The unexpected comment made me laugh. I knew it was a joke, but I appreciated her sense of humor. She was attractive, rich, and had a good sense of humor. If only I were 10 years younger. It's no good teasing an old man, I replied. We both laughed lightly at the situation. Come on, Mr. Turner. Let's go get some fresh lobsters for dinner. We finished our beers and headed out the door. The restaurant was fantastic, and the food was great. I didn't particularly like the wine she chose, but I tried to be gracious. What's wrong with the wine, Mr. Turner? Was I that obvious? I'm sorry, it was unintentional. It's a reflex from when I was 18 and got sick on cheap white wine. I've never been so miserable, and now the smell or taste of white wine makes me nauseous. It's good wine, but don't worry about it. 5 minutes later, we had 2 cold beers. Strangely, there was little conversation during the meal. At the end, we each had a fruit sorbet and drank coffee. Tell me about yourself. Are you married? Do you have children? What do you do for a living? We have all night, and I'm dying to know what brought us together. It's a lot of questions. I have 2 daughters, both studying international banking at Columbia University. I just pay the tuition. I don't know much more than that. That's interesting. I have a master's degree from Columbia and occasionally guest lecture there. I think I've met both of your daughters. Did you see them today? We had lunch together this morning. They hate it when I make them skip class. You must have married young to have 2 daughters in college. I felt comfortable with this Mediterranean beauty. I could have talked to her all night. I am currently estranged from my wife. It's a strange word. I never thought I'd use it. She left me for a rich wheeler dealer who builds shopping malls or business complexes. He's got a fancy car and a big apartment. She decided to switch, and our divorce will be final in about 4 weeks. That's a stupid reason to leave a good marriage. I guess everything was fine until she met this guy. She was never happy with my choice of work. I had several opportunities to advance my career, but she refused to move. I wasn't thrilled about it, but decided it was necessary to save the marriage. Now I feel like nothing. And what do you do? There was an awkward pause. How do you tell a wealthy, successful woman that you work as a grocery manager at a supermarket? She noticed my discomfort and responded accordingly. It's not important. We can talk about it later. No, it's okay. I'm not ashamed of what I do. It's just that being a supermarket grocery manager isn't a job that impresses women. It doesn't bother my daughters, but my wife often conveniently forgot to mention it in conversation. I could tell it bothered her. Do you like what you do? Yes, and I'm good at it. The server brought more coffee and cleared the table. Mr. Turner, I realize you've only known me for a short time, but I believe first impressions are very important. Very briefly, what's your first impression of me? The question put me in a tough spot. If I answered honestly, I might push her away. If I tried to flatter her, she'd see right through it and think I was lying. What to do? In short, I see you as beautiful, intelligent, educated, and confident. Her head was slightly tilted down, and her eyes looked up at me with a small smirk. I was hoping for candor. I'm sorry, we were having such a pleasant evening, and I didn't want to spoil it. Do you really have such a bad opinion of me? I don't want you to resent me. Maybe that's why your wife left you for another man. If you hadn't always tried to please her, your marriage might have been stronger. Her comment stung, but there was some truth to it. Miss Goldberg, I believe you are cunning and manipulative. You use your beauty and charm to get what you want. You're used to getting your way and are a bit of a spoiled brat. You play with men but are afraid of commitment. You know how to make, spend, and invest money wisely. If you weren't so obsessed with proving you're as good as any man, you'd probably make a good mother. I felt uncomfortable after saying that, but she made me angry with her remark about my marriage. We sat in silence for a few moments, staring at each other. Do you really think I'd be a good mother? The mood improved dramatically. During the short drive back to the condo, things were pleasant again. She had heard everything I said, but seemed to accept it without argument. She wanted the truth, and I gave it to her. The fact that she wasn't upset made me feel better about being honest with her. My night as Olivia Goldberg's sex slave turned out to be uneventful. It's hard to have sex in separate bedrooms, but that was okay because I wasn't expecting anything. The next morning, I was up first and found a breakfast of fruit danishes and hot coffee waiting for me, along with a copy of the Wall Street Journal. The wind had died down, and I enjoyed relaxing on the balcony overlooking the Caribbean. I could get used to this. Olivia joined me about 20 minutes later, playfully snatching part of the paper. We sat in silence, reading and sipping coffee as if we'd been doing it for years. Although I had known her for less than 24 hours, everything about her felt natural and comfortable. I'm afraid my phone doesn't work here, and I really want to call my daughters, I mentioned. Olivia handed me her cell phone. Feel free to use mine. Wendy, it's Daddy. Where are you? Is everything okay? Dad, my phone says you're in London. Are you all right? I'm actually in the Cayman Islands, and everything is fine. I just wanted to let you know that I didn't go straight home. I'm staying with a friend and had to use her phone. They showed a picture of you on TV last night, getting on a plane with Olivia Goldberg. What are you doing with her? She's the friend I'm staying with. What's the big deal? Dad, that woman is a barracuda. She eats men for breakfast. As Olivia brought a tray of breakfast to the balcony, I couldn't resist saying, This is my daughter Wendy. She's in New York. She told me to be careful because you're a barracuda. Sure enough, Wendy heard me and let out a loud groan over the phone. I could hear Wendy and Tina discussing something quickly on the other end. Why are you there? How do you know her? When are you coming home? Before I could answer, Olivia was already standing with her hand outstretched, waiting for me to hand her the phone. Hi, Wendy, it's Olivia. Your father has told me about you and your sister. I'll be in New York tomorrow and would love to have lunch with you too. Where can I pick you up? Oh, from your professor's class? No problem, I'll pick you up at 11. Okay, goodbye. Olivia handed me back her cell phone. Your daughter said goodbye. I'll have lunch with them tomorrow. I promise to be nice, even though they think I'm a fish." She giggled and playfully wiggled her hips as she walked to her room. An hour later, we were at the Federal Reserve Bank of the Cayman Islands. With Olivia's experienced guidance, I set up my first offshore bank account. 20 minutes later, I saw my new account credited with $4 million from Hayes and Burns. I figured that was a fair price for 215 pennies. After dinner, Olivia suggested we go feed manta rays. During dinner, I asked her why she worked for a firm like Hayes and Burns and learned that she owned 60% of the company. "What else can you tell me about yourself? Apparently, you're a major player on the global financial scene, and I'm embarrassed to say that I don't know anything about you." "I was born and raised in London. My father is Syrian and my mother is Turkish. I have an MBA from Columbia University. I'm not married but have been engaged twice. I haven't had a serious relationship in over 3 years. I've learned not to trust men who show interest in me. I guess you could say I'm cynical. Most of them want something from me but have nothing to offer in return." "That's unfortunate. I was hoping to get a ride back to the condo. Does that mean you don't trust me?" "You need to take this seriously, you big jerk," she replied with a smirk. "I'm sorry if I came across as insensitive. I didn't mean to be. I guess it's hard for me to relate to your problem. I'll try to be better." "Okay, let's relax. We have a party to go to." We ended the evening at a cocktail party at a major hotel. Everyone knew her and treated her like a celebrity. I spent the evening trying to remain inconspicuous. I was still wearing the street clothes I had worn in New York and hadn't anticipated traveling to the tropics. Initially, Olivia felt obliged to accompany me, but I persuaded her to enjoy herself while I blended in with the background. Despite her best efforts, she constantly checked on me throughout the night. I found myself chatting with a couple of Hispanic gentlemen, cattle ranchers from Argentina. The conversation started with soccer and then moved to fishing. At least they spoke in English for my benefit. One of them remarked on how attractive Olivia looked, not knowing I was her chaperone for the evening. I felt a bit flattered. My contribution to the conversation was mostly smiles and nods. I wasn't knowledgeable enough about the topics to add much until Luis Fernandez brought up investments. He was interested in winter wheat. I listened as he detailed his investment plans, though he seemed to know little about it. I got the impression he was quite wealthy, and I was curious how he managed it. "Mr. Turner, I can see by the look on your face that you disagree with me about investing in winter wheat," Luis said, catching me off guard. I had intended to remain invisible. "I'm sorry, Luis, I'm not an investor and don't understand the complexities of this case," I replied, using his first name out of discomfort. "Maybe so, but I have a feeling you have an opinion. I'm going to pester you until you share it with us," he insisted. Trapped, I tried to smile. "I need a fresh drink." For the next hour, the two gentlemen listened intently as I explained that the excellent winter wheat crop in Alberta and Saskatchewan would more than compensate for the poor harvest in the States. The Canadian Grain Board had leased all available silos in North and South Dakota to store the surplus and even reserved rail cars for short-term storage. Within a week, winter wheat futures would begin to fall and continue to decline until the market stabilized. Both Canada and the U.S. would be forced to unload wheat overseas. I was running out of clever words when Olivia approached. Luis and his friend were flattered that she joined our group and genuinely surprised when she grabbed my hand and led me away. "What was that, Alan?" "We were just talking about food, groceries," I smiled as we left to head back to the condo. The next morning, we flew back to New York, where a group of photographers eagerly awaited Olivia's arrival. A courier from Hayes and Burns handed me a small package containing the coins I had left behind. Olivia and I said our goodbyes, and I headed to the commuter train terminal to fly back to Huntsville. The divorce and the sale of the house proceeded as planned. Sam Edwards from the main office left several messages asking me to call him. They again asked me to consider moving to the company's headquarters in New York, and this time I agreed. Paul Ward also left a message wanting to meet for lunch. I tucked myself away in my locker at work and wished my shift good luck. A photo of Owen and Tracy at a local politician's barbecue caught my eye in the paper. They looked like the perfect couple. It took me an entire day to scan and catalog all the coins in the bag from New York. With 3 weeks left, I decided to list them on eBay as soon as possible. Everything should go smoothly, as long as they didn't attract any scammers. It took another full day to post the ads and prepare all the envelopes and labels for shipping. All the money went into my PayPal account and then to my new offshore bank. Now I had the weekend to relax. Friday's lunch with Paul Ward was interesting. Paul was pleased that Owen was involved, but disappointed that I hadn't benefited from the deal. Explaining the details would have been too complicated, so I kept it simple. Lunch went well, and before he left, he handed me the deeds to 5 acres of land on the outskirts of town. He and his wife were moving to Florida and wanted to settle their affairs before leaving. No good deed goes unrewarded. Shortly after Paul and I parted ways, my cell phone rang. Wendy and Tina were arriving in Nashville in 2 hours. I had plenty of time to pick them up. Airfare to Nashville was half the price of airfare to Huntsville, so the girls were on a budget. I had no trouble getting there to pick them up. Wendy couldn't wait to talk about Olivia. The lecture hall was hosting an advanced corporate finance course for over 300 students, she began. In the middle of the lecture, the professor stopped to introduce Olivia to the class. She just walked in like she owned the place. She spoke to the class for about 10 minutes and then announced that she needed 2 students for lunch at the Westin Hotel. We couldn't believe it when she called our names. "So, you liked her?" I asked. "She's amazing, Dad. How on earth did you manage to meet her?" "Well, she said she was looking for a sex slave, and I was her first choice." Tina tapped me on the shoulder. "This isn't funny. Be serious." "Okay, what did you talk about at lunch?" I asked. "She asked about our classes and schoolwork," Tina chuckled. "She had a lot of questions about you. In fact, Wendy and I think she's interested in more than just friendship." "I'm 10 years older than her and not exactly wealthy. I'm sorry, girls, but she's out of my league." "Daddy, she can have any man she wants. Why would she choose you? Think about it from our point of view. You're perfect, but Olivia Goldberg doesn't know you like we do." "Apparently your mother didn't know me either," I muttered. Everything went quiet for a few minutes. My comment about their mother felt like a low blow, and I regretted it. "I'm sorry, girls. That didn't sound right. Your mother is a wonderful woman, and I have no right to say that." "Don't worry about it, Dad. We understand more than you think," Wendy reassured me. We drove in silence for a few miles. Just as we crossed the Alabama state line, Tina's cell phone buzzed. "Hello, pause. We arrived about an hour ago. Everything's fine, pause. You're kidding, pause. That sounds great, I'll tell him. Thanks for the call. Bye." In the rearview mirror, I noticed Tina giving Wendy a thumbs up. "What was that?" Tina leaned over the front seat. "Guess what, Daddy? Olivia's coming to Huntsville on Tuesday morning. She said you have to pay her for the night and that she expects breakfast in bed." I was flattered, but felt pressured by Olivia and now my daughters. It all sounded wonderful, but I hoped I was up to the task. The weekend with the girls went great. They spent Saturday afternoon with their mom but didn't get to meet Owen. I asked them not to mention Olivia. We sorted out all the things they wanted to leave at the house. By the time they left, we had everything organized. I made an upfront payment to store their belongings until they finished school. As we drove back to Nashville, they made me promise to be friendly with Olivia. "What do you mean by that?" I asked. "Just don't make her mad," Wendy said. That seemed simple enough. They were excited about my move to New York. I still didn't understand what Olivia saw in an older man who didn't even own an Armani suit. When I got home, it was time to relax with a beer. In the Sunday paper, there were no pictures of Tracy and Owen this week, but there was a short story about Horizon Development having trouble financing a local project. Winter wheat futures had fallen in value for a record time. This was interesting. I called Jerry Wilson and asked him to come over. It wasn't lunch, but I figured we could talk over a couple of beers. Owen Brooks had a checkered past, to say the least. For the past few years, he'd been either broke or very wealthy. He spent a lot of time moving to stay ahead of creditors and friends who lent him money. His new project was beginning to fail, and the people and investors who supported him were disappearing. I don't remember beer ever tasting so good. Monday morning turned out better than expected. The coins I put up for auction sold much better than I anticipated. Carlson estimated the value of the coins at about $300,000. It didn't look like they would go that high, but they might well have gone over $200,000. In a little over 2 weeks, I would be a free man. 3 months ago, this would have seemed like a disaster, but today I was looking forward to it. The people who bought the house had negotiated the financing and were ready to close the deal. I thought it was funny that Tracy felt so secure with Owen that she didn't need any of our joint possessions. I wondered if she realized how unstable her future was. At 3 o'clock, I had a meeting with the people who bought the house. A check for $200,000 went immediately into my offshore account. They had no objection to me staying in the house for another week, which suited both of us. The next morning, I received a phone call before I had even had my coffee. An unknown person officially notified me that Miss Goldberg would be arriving at 10:45 a.m. on Delta Flight 724. I arrived 30 minutes early, feeling a little nervous. Several paparazzi had gotten wind of her arrival and were waiting outside the terminal. I tried my best to stay inconspicuous, parking in the short-term lot. Instead of waiting for me to pick her up, Olivia chose to walk with me to the car. The photographers noted my license plate number, and the secret was out. I wasn't used to such attention, but Olivia didn't seem embarrassed at all. She apologized for the fuss on the way home. I couldn't help but think about how much I wanted to kiss her as she got off the plane. When we arrived at my house, I was embarrassed by how sparse it looked. Over the past few months, I had gotten rid of almost everything. Only the essentials remained, which the new owners agreed to take responsibility for. Olivia seemed amused by my attempts to apologize. There was nothing to eat in the house, so we made a quick stop at the local Taco Bell, her choice. I promised her Dreamland ribs for dinner. It was nice to be around a woman with a healthy appetite. Olivia, I'm glad you're here, but I don't understand why. I assumed you'd be back to business. This is business, silly, she replied with a smile. I heard you're moving to New York next week and need a place to stay. I have a spare bedroom, and I'm here to help you pack. A truck will arrive tomorrow morning to move anything that won't fit in your car. Just no furniture, please. How did you know I was moving? I keep an eye on the small details, and the big ones follow naturally. It's nonsense, but I've always wanted to say that. Are you conspiring with my daughters? I tried to grin innocently, but it's tough for an old man to look sly. Her offer caught me off guard, but I couldn't find a reason to refuse. Sure, let's get some boxes and start packing. I thought she'd be more comfortable in a boardroom or a bank, but she seemed to enjoy chatting with me, even though I felt a bit awkward about the age difference. We ended up throwing away more stuff than we packed. She had strong opinions about my closet and ignored my pleas for mercy. Once I settled in New York, she promised to take me shopping for suitable clothes. When we finished, we had more boxes than could fit in my car, but not enough for a moving van. I hoped she had ordered a small truck. I set aside my laptop and small printer to check an eBay auction. We were just getting ready for dinner when a new surprise arrived. A delivery van parked in front of the house. Olivia and I watched as the driver, in a sharp uniform, stepped out with a clipboard. Are you Alan Turner? Yes. I have a delivery for you. Where do you want it? What the hell is this? The car is from Mr. Luis Fernandez. Is there room in the garage? I pointed to the spot where Tracy's Volvo used to be, and Olivia giggled. I think she was amused by my confusion. 5 minutes later, I was staring at a shiny orange sports car next to my outdated Volvo. What the hell is this? With great pride, the courier said, This is a 2008 Lamborghini Gallardo Spider Superleggera model. Isn't it the most beautiful thing you've ever seen? Olivia could barely contain her laughter. She wasn't loud, but she was definitely enjoying herself. I signed the shipping form, and the courier left. I had no idea what to do with the car, but I knew I wasn't taking it to New York. Get in the Volvo, little Miss Funny Pants. My guest was still smiling as we pulled away from the driveway. I ordered a full rack of ribs and 2 Fosters. Could you explain what's going on with the car? Luis stocked up on winter wheat. Everyone thought he was crazy when the price started to drop, but he doubled his contracts and made over $40 million in less than a week. He was happy with the money and thrilled with the comments about his smart move. Well, good for Luis. I hope he didn't mention my name. He wanted to pay his respects to you, but didn't want to do it without your consent. He thanked me for bringing you to the party and asked for your address. I didn't know he was going to do that. The ribs arrived, and I watched as Olivia dipped a few in Tabasco before digging in. God, I love that girl. You know I'm going to send it back in the morning, right? That's what I thought. Don't worry. Luis won't be offended. He figured you'd refuse money but might feel obliged to keep the car. We ordered a few more beers because of the Tabasco. I felt good and didn't want to go home. I would have given anything to spend the night with this beautiful young woman. I envied those suave guys who could get any girl into bed in 5 minutes. The best I could hope for was a goodnight kiss. We couldn't talk all night, so I eventually had to go home. The next morning was wonderful. All my worries were gone as soon as we entered the house. Olivia took me by the hand and led me to the bedroom. Being a true gentleman, I made sure her needs were met first, and in return, I had the best night of my secluded life. Breakfast in bed consisted of juice, coffee, and Danish. I apologized for the simple fare, but she didn't mind. Eating off a tray in bed is uncomfortable, so after some giggles and rearranging, we moved to the kitchen. Breakfast in bed sounds neater than it is. Olivia, I don't want to spoil the mood, but why did you choose me? I don't have much to offer, and you deserve so much. I've been burned too many times by slick lover boys. I won't fall into that trap again. Ah, I see. You're attracted to me because I'm not a trickster or a cheat. She laughed and said, Alan, I was impressed with the deal you made with Andrew in New York. I just sold some coins. Not that it's silly, I found your proposal to purchase trust land intriguing. Do you see me as a philanthropist? Oh, not at all. I see you as a cunning bastard who took advantage of a unique situation to mess with his wife's lover. This made me smile. I was amazed at how smart she was and how well she hid it. Was that wrong? No, Alan, it was brilliant. I was impressed and wanted to know more about you. You couldn't have known what I was doing in New York. I knew what you did, but didn't find out the reason until days later. You were checking up on me. Of course, I'm not a fool. The boost in self-esteem was refreshing. Unfortunately, Olivia had an early morning flight back to New York. I hated to see her go, but she left me with a happy heart and the key to her apartment. The Lamborghini dealer couldn't pick up the car until the next day, but that was fine since I wasn't going to drive it. The movers came with a small truck and took my stuff to New York. Jerry Wilson called to say that Horizon Development was in serious financial trouble. Owen had mysteriously lost almost all its supporters overnight, and rumors were spreading that some people were collecting debts Owen hadn't paid. That evening, my almost ex-wife visited. To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure? I couldn't hide my sarcasm. I need to talk to you about some things. I'm leaving in a few days, but I'll help you any way I can. I was going to take my old Volvo, but it's gone. What's that orange car in the garage? Things were getting interesting. Sorry, Tracy. When you said you didn't want the Volvo, I sold it back to the dealer. He may still have it if you want to check. I've never heard Tracy use that term before. The orange car was a gift, but I'm returning it tomorrow. I can't imagine driving something like that. The sticker said $225,000. Who would give you a gift like that? Your new girlfriend? No, it was a cattle rancher from Argentina I helped a few weeks ago. It was just a thank you gift. What else can I do for you? Tracy paused, trying to find the right words. Would you like something to drink? I have beer and diet sodas. No, I can't stay long. How did you get here? I don't see a car. I took a cab. Alan, you said you were leaving in a few days. Is it okay if I stay here for a while? The house is sold. We closed the deal yesterday, and the new owners move in this weekend. They're letting me stay until Friday, but that's it. What's wrong with the apartment by the river? She didn't answer. After a brief lull, she asked, What happened to the money from the house? Things were getting interesting. It's all gone. You clearly said you didn't want anything. I used the money to set up a new apartment for my move. Where are you moving to? New York. I got a promotion and a big raise. I should be there by Monday. I wasn't going to tell Tracy I was living with Olivia or about the bank account in the Cayman Islands. You never told me what happened to the apartment. The lease expired, and the owner didn't want to renew it. Where do you live now? We're at the Holiday Inn until Owen finds a new place. I see. Now I understood why she wanted to move into our old house. Tracy looked confused, unsure how to ask for help. Is there anything else I can do for you? Could you give me a ride to the Holiday Inn? The first half of the trip went smoothly. I understand you have a girlfriend. Tell me about her. She's not really a girlfriend, more of a business partner. What kind of business? You're not doing any business. You're right. I'm just a grocery store clerk. I can't fool you, can I? Tracy was silent, looking out the window, whispering, Bastard. This was the moment to vent my frustration, to let her know how much the pictures in the papers hurt me. But instead, I just smiled. She was in a bad way, and I redeemed myself. I felt bad for a moment, but it passed quickly. I dropped her off at the motel entrance. She left without looking back or saying goodbye. I hated to say it, but I felt a sense of satisfaction. The week was shaping up nicely. Thursday morning, I unexpectedly received the final divorce papers. They were early, but who am I to complain? On the front page of the Huntsville paper was a picture of Olivia Goldberg arriving at the airport, holding the hand of your sincere friend. A copy of the newspaper is delivered free to each room at the Holiday Inn. Tracy can read it at breakfast. I was sure Owen would explain to her who Olivia was. I emptied the safety deposit box at the bank. My 7 pennies will come in handy soon. I thought Olivia would ask about them, but she never did. Our conversations were strictly social. If she was interested in me for business reasons, she never showed it. I set a buy it now price on all the coins in the auction. More than half were sold at that price. I spent the rest of the day packing the sold coins and preparing them for shipping. The rest of the auction would close by noon on Friday. If all PayPal payments went through, all coins would be mailed the same day. Any unscrupulous buyers would have to wait until Monday. Early Saturday morning, I was on my way. Most of the money from my PayPal account was transferred to my Cayman account. I left a small amount on PayPal in case I saw something I just had to have. The new house owners arrived just as I was leaving. It was a win-win for both of us. The trip north would take about 12 hours with no delays. Olivia was in the apartment and promised to prepare a home-cooked dinner for my arrival. I wondered who would actually cook it. It felt good to know I could still win the heart of such a beautiful woman. I had no doubt I could fulfill all her expectations. Just as I crossed the Virginia state line on Interstate 81, Wendy called. Owen Brooks had skipped town, leaving Tracy with no car, no place to live, no money, and a hefty motel bill. I asked Wendy what she thought I should do. She laughed and said, "Smile.